What up, world, and welcome to another episode of the South African Spies podcast. Today, we have another installment of the Bramdo Bites segment where Mickey and I are going to be discussing our experiences in the working world as we were newly introduced, because I think we took very different parts, and it would actually be interesting to compare notes on these early tender stages of our adulthood. So, hi, Mickey, and welcome back.
Hello, and I never take notes.
That is a good point. I will be doing the mental note taking here. So, Mickey, let's get straight into it, right? I think our work experiences were a bit different because you went the very typical route. After school, you went to study something, and then you kind of like knew exactly what your career path would be. And I say this in very inverted commas.
Because you're calling me basic.
I'm not calling you basic, but I'm saying there was a path.
Yeah, there was an end goal to my career, and because of that, there was only one way to get there. There wasn't a do it while you work kind of way to get there.
Yeah, but there also is like a way to get there. So there's a path kind of like predetermined.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I decided to not go to campus after school. Instead, I insisted that I wanted to work and study at the same time.
Yeah, and I just went straight into studying.
Okay, so you went straight from studying, and we heard about your first year and all of those lovely campus times that you've had. But you were basically a student for a really long time and then had to transition into the working world. So first, let's talk about what was your actual first working experience.
So I had a really weird start to my career. There was no engineering department. They were starting it out, and they just wanted to fill the positions very quickly. So I interviewed for it, and they said, okay, cool, but we need you to start in September. And this was in my final year. So I was legally employed from before I finished my degree.
Well, that's pretty cool.
It was, but then also I was busy with my dissertations and projects and stuff. So it wasn't a lot of lecture time. So I told the company, okay, as much as I can, I'll be in the office. And when I need to be in campus, I need to be in campus. However, that happened for a couple of weeks in the beginning. And as deadlines started hitting for the final projects, final dissertations, I had to spend a lot more time at campus. And that meant very little time actually at the office.
But I mean, they knew this was bound to happen because they knew that you were still finishing, right?
Yeah. They just wanted me on board as well because the aim was to get me over to the US for training. And they didn't want me to start that procedure in January. They'd rather me start all of the paperwork, get all the visa stuff sorted, and it would just be easier to have me on the payroll while doing that instead of explaining to the consulate now, we signed this guy from university and now all of a sudden we want to sponsor him to go to the US for a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. But also I think opportunities like that are very hard to come by now.
Yeah, it is. And I was lucky that I got an opportunity to go and learn from people overseas and get that start that a lot of people don't get. They get the normal graduate start, where I was never seen as a graduate because it was a small engineering department.
Okay, well, that's still cool. But that was back in the day, right? I mean, you're basically ancient now.
How long have we been working for? We've been working for the same. Oh, now I've finally superseded you.
Finally. Only recently, though.
Yeah. But what's it? How many years?
13?
I started in 2011. September 2011.
13 then.
Yeah. So I went from campus, right, where they kind of prep you for a working world as best they could. How did it go for you? Because you went from matric into working. That's a bit of a bigger jump, right?
Kind of. So for me, working was actually something that I try to do as much as I could of. So when my sister worked, she started at some IT company, and they did stuff. I don't remember exactly what stuff.
It sounds very dodgy.
No, it wasn't dodgy. It was a legit company. But when she came back to Joburg, then that was the first proper job that she got. And because she was there for a while, when I eventually was, I think, in grade 10, and, holidays and stuff came around, I was like, well, I want to work too. And she managed to get me to do just normal basic filing and paperwork, just really admin, make copies and, do stuff like that. And from then, I was kind of hooked on working because it was like, oh my gosh, I can literally work 2 holidays and get myself whatever I wanted for like Christmas or at that time, my priority was actually to buy everybody Christmas presents.
Okay.
So, I mean, nothing's really changed. But yeah, that was, always it. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then, grade 11 came and I kept looking for opportunities to work. So I worked with her for a couple of holidays. And then I worked in like the retail industry for 1 December, which was hectic. But I still really enjoyed working, no matter what it was that I was doing. And then when matric came, I knew that I wasn't going to study the following year, but I also knew that I was going to have a problem getting into what I wanted to get into because of my age.
Because you were under 18.
Yeah. So I was still, 17 when I got my matric results and stuff, and it was still 9 months to go until I was legal. What I wanted to do was actually move overseas and au pair. The vision in my head was I was going to move to London, I was going to au pair there, and I was going to study business management while I was doing it. Now, I wasn't necessarily underage to au pair because I could have done that apart from driving.
Yeah.
Because that would have been the issue. But I looked at other options. And then I had this interest of like actually maybe going onto the ships and, working specifically if I went into the ships, I wanted to like work in the casino and on the floors there. And for that, I was underage.
Okay.
So I couldn't do that. And it actually ended up being that in my matric year, also while writing my final exams, I went looking for jobs because I didn't want to spend December not doing anything. So I wanted something part-time and I ended up at a restaurant and they took me on and I just obviously exam days I wasn't there, but I worked weekends and stuff. And that December was literally the greatest December for me because, oh my gosh, the tips were crazy. Also got a tip for dropping a beer on someone and then I got 100 Rand tip afterwards.
Great night.
Great night.
So you didn't feel like you missed out on that December holiday after school because your friends were having a great time? And
No, not at all. I was actually, so the person I was dating at the time, we both were doing it.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I didn't have anybody or I wasn't seeing anybody or friends or whatever because everybody was going away and stressing about matric results. I was working and stressing about matric results. So, it was a better option for me. But it was also really fun because while waitressing, I meet friends.
With other waitresses and waiters and stuff?
No, they all hated us. But I did make friends with other shop owners. So in the mall, other shop owners that would, walk past in that entrance to get in and they would notice and they'd see. And because we stand outside as a waitress, they see you and then, you greet and stuff like that. And a lot of the shops in the mall, when they had their Christmas parties, I got invited.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is super cool. So it was still very much a December vibe. And then there were certain groups of friends that came from school with their families and big parties, joining and stuff. So I think I saw people, but it was really fulfilling to me. And then there were regular customers who I made friends with. And yeah, that became a really big December for me and I really enjoyed it. And then when that December ended, I think it was early Jan, just after New Year's and stuff, you're okay, cool. It's basically the end of holiday season. So I'm going to go and look for something else. And they actually offered and asked if I wanted to stay on and help and kind of move into management for the restaurant. And it's yeah, cool, but it's not really where I see myself long term. So
yeah, you didn't want to get stuck there.
Yeah. So I decided not to. And then I spent majority of my year, actually, my first year out of school at home, and I didn't work. And then as soon as I turned 18, I applied for something. My friend and I saw something somewhere and we applied. So my goal was literally just to get any job so that I could fund my study and do it part-time. So I wasn't really looking for anything specific, in field, out of field, it really didn't matter to me. And the job that became available was it was a call center. But it was an inbound call center because we know for a fact I suck at sales, can't do sales to save my life. So it would definitely be inbound. And it was on the technical side. So I worked for an electronics company and I was on the technical end of like queries and stuff. It was really cool. It was like TVs and appliances and like all these things.
Yeah, so you got to learn about the tech side as well while teaching other people how to fix their problems.
Yeah, and I really like that because I like tech.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. And for me, that wasn't really a major adjustment because I really like the culture of working and being in that kind of like routine and stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, so you knew, like, you had the feeling you were going to be a people's person and work with people in some form in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that people had to be involved because it's just my personality.
Yeah, so that reminds me of something for me is if you had to ask me in my final year of studying, what kind of civil engineer would you be? The last thing I would have said was going to be a structural engineer.
Why?
So my highest mark was hydraulics, which is water and stuff around water. And I thought, okay, maybe I'd go somewhere that way inclined because evidently I'm good at it. And when the opportunity came to work for my first job, which was a structural job, and I just took it because the market for finding a job in South Africa is so difficult, you just take what you can. And after that, enjoyed doing it. That was it.
Interesting.
Now, if you had to ask me to go do the other side, I would never, ever, ever, ever do it. But you look at my friend who's doing that other side, and I was sure he was going to be in the structural space. But
Because that was his highest mark.
That was his highest mark.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, he's definitely going to be the structural guy, and I'm going to be the water guy. And we've kind of swapped.
I'm not even surprised. This is just kind of what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure if things were different at the time, we'd probably work together on all our work.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so that's how we got into our first jobs, right?
Yeah.
And what do you feel was probably like the biggest thing you had to adjust to becoming a professional?
So I was pretty lucky with the way our university handled our final year. They structured the course in such a way that all your lecture stuff happens for the first 3.5 years, and your last 6 months, they simulate a work environment. So they literally have an office set up in one of the buildings where you go, you clock in, you clock out, kind of, you have a lunch break at a certain time, and you sit there and you work on your projects and dissertations and whatever it needs to be. And if you need to make meetings with your lecturers or stuff, you handle it like you would in a professional setting. So when I got to actual work life, it was quite familiar to be like, okay, I need to sit in this room the whole day. It's not moving around and going to student center. It's one place. And setting up meetings to talk to people, not just like going and knocking on a lecturer's door. You had to formally set it up.
So you had to send emails and stuff.
We had to send emails and make an appointment and say, title, subject, body, write a proper email and set up a time, look at people's calendars. So it was all familiar to me when I got to the working world. What I would say that was a bit of a shock was the amount of people that didn't do.
I was just going to say, I think that's such a valuable simulation to do in campus because even I know I've seen people come in and just not even know where to switch the computer on, which baffles me.
But even the technical aside, the etiquette of working in an office space and being, aware of, okay, there's other people in the space. I can't just be loud. I can't just be whatever. I need to be a bit more formal. And the etiquette for some people just, needs to be taught more than others. And you would think, okay, you're going into a professional space. People have learned this before coming in, especially for me coming in as the youngster.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I think I've also seen the same thing. And I've seen it across the board, actually. I don't think etiquette is something that everybody grows into when they start working. I actually think some people just never learn proper business etiquette.
Look, being in the engineering space, I get it, because a lot of our people after university go straight into working on site, and that's not an office etiquette. Yeah. It's very informal, and sometimes it's the opposite of what you would expect in a professional setting.
Makes sense.
So after working as your technical call center help, did you see similar patterns or anything unexpected happening in the call center, especially because I would imagine there's stuff happen there because you don't have a supervisor all the time?
We actually did have a supervisor. We had 2 IC and we had proper supervisor and stuff. But I did understand why people have such bad perceptions of call centers itself. And I think it's like so degrading to say like, oh, you worked in a call center. For me, it wasn't.
A job was a job.
Yeah, it was that, but it's also like, at the end of the day, this was giving me skills that I wasn't going to get anywhere else. Or at some point, these skills were going to come in handy. And in my head, it was like, regardless of what job I'm doing, there's going to be something I'm going to learn from this, and I'm okay to do that. And then when I did start, I noticed, I think the thing that really annoyed me the most was that I'm not a Karen, but I am sometimes. Like, I like respect. I think, when you talk to somebody over the phone and it's a service that you're providing and stuff, like I do expect somebody to talk respectfully on the other end. I do expect somebody to at least listen and to try and be helpful and stuff. What I don't like is, oh, can't do this, or you must do this and you must do that, without actually like listening properly. So that really annoyed me. And I think that is not like call center specific. That's actually annoyed me throughout my entire career, is the people who don't listen and just kind of push things away or try and sweep it under the rug and, stuff like that. And the lack of respect, that really is what got to me. But then the other thing that really, really grated me was the email replies. So, when you go into a website and you send an email or a query, right? Then obviously somebody actually has to respond to that. So I was looking at that response rate and it was like at 5%. It was like, that's pathetic. It was so pathetic. And I was like, you know what? I'll take it up. Just give it to me and I'll do it. And then I looked at the previous emails that were sent and I was like horrified because it was that shorthand form writing, WAT and R instead of ARU and U instead of YOU and stuff. And I almost died.
But isn't that because like a lot of people that are sending the emails are not professionals in email?
No, they were typing this out at the computer because you can only access that system from the computer. Not the emails coming in. This was in the company's responses going out.
Oh, I thought this was requests from clients.
No, if it's like that from clients, it's fine. I understand. I'm not worried about that. It was the emails going out, and that's what I couldn't handle.
Okay.
So instead, I took it, and then within like 2 weeks, I literally responded to all the emails, and I got that response rate up to like 95. And I think those were the kind of things that also showed me what is more important to me and where I like spending my time. And I realized customer service will always be something I'm very passionate about.
Okay.
So that was it. But I think one of my other shocks was understanding how things worked when you are a suck-up and when you're not. That was my big shock to the system. And I learned this very early on. It didn't matter whether you did everything right, you did it to the best of your ability or whatever it is. But the people who would suck up and go and buy that supervisor that extra lunch or, go and give compliments and constantly go and like all that brown-nosing stuff, that seemed to be what gets you, ahead. And I didn't quite accept that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Because throughout my career, like there's been those people that you can see they get where they are because of the brown nosing, and it's always irritated me and it's got me into a lot of trouble because I cannot not be vocal about it. And people don't like being called out on it. And people don't like when everyone starts to realize that there's this cushy relationship with two people and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally okay with having a really good relationship with people that you work with, whether they are superior or not. What I'm not okay with is using that to enhance work or to get away with things that are work-related.
Yeah, I cannot understand, because if you look at my relationship right now with where I'm working, you would think the same of like, okay, the relationship's a bit too close, but it's actually because we have such a good team bond that everyone is that close. But I'm not doing it to benefit me in any way besides the fact that the good relationship at work leads to increased productivity for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not always the case. I don't take coffee to people to make their day easier. I give them advice and help them with problems rather. Whereas in one of my previous jobs, this one guy found out what type of coffee the team lead liked, and he would fetch it for her every day and have it ready on her desk before she got there.
Okay, so doing that is one thing, but what did he get out of that? Was it like clear that he was getting away with stuff or getting less work or getting promotions or whatever from it?
Yeah, so it was absolutely clear to a lot of people where the nicer jobs that would put you in the spotlight with the people above, that were handing out bonuses and all these things, you get your names on those projects now because you're getting assigned to them. Whether you contribute or not, you're part of that team. Whereas the rest of us had to pick up the slack on the job no one wanted to touch. And, we would typically get the jobs that were doing badly and would get the bad reputation, and then problematic jobs. And then it's like, okay, but you always work on the problematic jobs, so it must be you, because the people higher up don't see that you're getting assigned to these and not getting a chance to contribute to something that can be successful.
Makes sense. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about career paths, right? So you started as sort of the grad, but not grad kind of role, right? And then you stayed in engineering throughout your entire career.
Yeah, so I did. It was fortunate and unfortunate at the same time to skip that grad step, but then also when I then changed jobs, I had missed that grad step. So a lot of the engineering companies that focused on engineering would start their grads up with the way their processes work, and it kind of is the same throughout most of the other engineering companies. Now, because I didn't start an engineering company, I didn't learn those things in advance. So when I got there for the first time, I had to do something like a timesheet where I didn't have to do that before, because our time wasn't billable. It was a company expense. We were a service in-house. So that was a bit of a weird one to kind of get grips to how projects work in terms of their filing systems and stuff. I had to get used to that. And then also, I had a very specific role at my first company, which was targeted at a single point of engineering. And there was nothing in the scope around that. It was very specific, very niche. So when I moved to a bigger company now, I had to take on projects that had a lot more variety, but I didn't have the bridge between university and engineer, grad bridge, to be taught this is how to calculate, this is how to do these things. So I had to get up to speed on my own and just make it work. So that was very difficult.
And how long did it take for you to feel like you were up to scratch with everyone else?
13 years.
Oh dear. Okay.
No, I think by the time I left that company, that's when I felt like I was at the point, because unfortunately, because of the people that I didn't get along with, the relationship just broke down and I looked for a place outside. We all left on good terms, I think, at the end, but it just wasn't the place for me to be. And I moved on, but I moved on into a much more senior position because I was ready.
So, I mean, it just was more difficult, but you got there.
It was more difficult. It meant a lot of me working extra hours and working by myself.
That's basically training on the job.
Basically training on the job, which I'm sure you had to do a lot of because you switched career path.
Kind of. So I was in the technical call center, and then I was there for about 9 months, I think. And then I was like, well, I'm working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts and like all of that standard things, getting taken advantage of because I was the one to be like, cool, I'll help. I always said yes for everything. And eventually my mother said, nah, I'm tired of this. You're going to leave now. And I resigned. And then it took about less than a month. Somehow my CV got to a different company. It was also technical, was in the broadband space, and I got interviewed for another call center role, also inbound. But what was kind of interesting about this is that the one question I asked in my interview is what really landed me the role. And it was a very simple question. All I asked was, how long should I wait until I hear feedback? And they said to me, no one's ever asked us that before. And I was like,
I thought that would be something most people would ask.
Exactly. That's what I thought too. And I was like, okay. But it seems to be that the batch of people they were interviewing weren't asking this. And I was very upfront with the fact that, I'll learn and I can learn easily and quickly because I also knew very early on that was one of my biggest skill sets is that I learn fast and I can learn anything fast. So I moved into this space. And when I moved, there were 2 call centers. One was for inbound technical and one was for inbound accounts. So if you had issues with your billings or not receiving your bills or being double billed, whatever, anything related to like the money and the payments and the finances and stuff went into one call center. And then obviously technical help went into the other. But we kind of sat next to each other. And what was for me very cool is that I was the only girl hired for technical. And obviously I was like, cool, I have bragging rights here because I'm the only one of the girls here who's on the technical side of things, because we know finance is not my thing. Dealing with other people's money on top of it is definitely not my thing. And it was really there that I realized that no matter where I end up, I'm going to end up in this learning space. So after 3 months of me being there, when new people came in, they were brought to me to train them. You know, the shadowing and the training them on the system and all of that was all left to me. And I really enjoyed that. I stayed there for just under 2 years. And then I left and I went to the firm that I was at for a very long time. And that was, you know, one of the big 4 firms. It was probably the best working experience of my life. But I also started in the call center there, except that that was an inbound call center. And, you know, I said like this call center is going to give you skills that one day will come in handy. The reason I was hired over a lot of other IT technicians was because I was coming in with customer service experience that the new supervisor wanted to have in this team. Because how it worked is that the call center dealt with employees of the company.
Okay.
So like when you had issues with your computer, then you phone your IT team and you're like, hey, do this, you know, like I can't access this, so this is giving me an issue, blah, blah, blah. Then like I was on the other end of that. And because I introduced that like kind of level of etiquette and customer service and stuff, that was a good thing. But even there, I didn't stay long because in the same company, then I was like, I have a chance here to actually be in learning, which is what I wanted. And eventually I got to train new joiners and stuff. And then I made my big change into the learning and development space. And I took care of all the grads and everybody else in the company from a learning.
Okay, so I have something that I'm going to just deviate from us for a little bit because it's something I'm actually working on a LinkedIn post at the moment because it irritates me so much. Is you look at when I was hired and the company knew, okay, he's not an engineer, he hasn't had the grad experience, but we can train him to do what we need to do. And it's the same for you now. Okay, she's not the technical expertise as all the other candidates, but she can be trained for that, but she has talent in other places. And you look at now with a lot of applications that you've been doing for like jobs here, and people are like, oh, you don't have the experience, we're not going to take you. You don't know Dutch yet, we're not going to take you. And it just annoys me to see that people are not hired for their ability to learn, because you could easily learn Dutch if they were willing to teach you. The company that I'm at gave me that opportunity to say, okay, you have a skill that we like, you don't have this skill, but we can teach you. Yeah. And I just don't see where that's now become a trend, that people's ability to learn is not as important.
Do you think that maybe it's just now that people don't show their ability to learn?
No, I don't think so. I think the people that are doing the talent hiring have forgotten the point of hiring talent. They want to hire accomplished everything people because it makes their life simple and easy. Instead of saying talent can be taught other things, you don't have to have someone because in my opinion, someone who has the CV where he has every single skill or she has every single skill that we're looking for is also probably closed off to learning anything new.
True. So you think it is more beneficial to hire somebody who is eager to learn and has the ability to broaden their knowledge and expertise and skill set, as opposed to somebody who has or is 18 years old but 22 years worth of experience?
100%. And I think that's always been the way I am.
I get that. And I agree. I think for me especially, I think I benefited more, but I think the teams I worked in benefited more because I gave more automatically because I was eager to learn.
Yeah. And it's happened for me as well. Like, okay, my Dutch is still not as great, but I'm learning.
What are you talking about? Your Dutch is great. We don't go to the shop without you.
So I'm still learning. But when you look at the software, right? Obviously, I didn't use any Dutch software coming here. And my current boss was like, no, we'll teach you. It's fine. You've used other software.
Yeah.
You know, like
principles are the same.
The mathematics doesn't change. Physics of the world doesn't change. You just need to get to grips with something new. And you look at it now, and I actually have a designated license key in my office for one of the software programs because no one else uses it. I am the professional on it. I'm the one that other engineers come to ask questions for. Even my boss sometimes comes and says, how do you do this? Can you do this in the software?
Just because job markets are so tough these days, this is maybe why they feel that they're getting the best people if they do have everything on the checklist ticked, I guess. I do think there is now a disconnect though.
Yeah, I think it's fine, but that balanced tree of hiring people that are closed off to learning is going to fall over one day, and it's going to lead to a lot more problems for a lot of companies, in my opinion.
I agree. I definitely do agree. Talking about people you learn from, though, what I wanted to ask you is, in the workplace, did you have any mentors or people that you looked up to?
It was actually very long before I found someone that I looked up to. Unfortunately, like when I started working, I didn't have that. The whole engineering team started together. So we all kind of learned together. And then at the second company, because there was people that were doing too much of the sucking up, I backed off completely. I'm like, I'm not even going to get involved in all of that. I'm just going to put my head down and do my own thing. So it was only after I moved again that I like found someone who I looked up to and said, okay, this guy, he knows what he's doing. I'm going to use him as my mentor.
So you found somebody that you selected to be your mentor, not somebody that was like assigned to you or...
No, because when I joined at that stage, I was already a senior engineer and I got brought on to lead projects and stuff. So it was never going to be assigned to me. It was more up to me to go and be like, I want to learn more from you. I want to gain more knowledge. So let me ask questions and build a relationship. So
was it only like one person or did you have like many?
No, I only had the one. That was it until now, where I think where I am now, there's a lot of people to learn from and in a lot of different spaces, which is great. But if you had to ask me, there's still one person that I see as like my mentor, is someone I go to for everything. And for you, did you have a mentor?
I think my entire career was filled with mentors.
From the very first?
No, not from the very first. So my first 2 jobs, I wouldn't really say I had any mentors. But I think when I got into the big firm, that's when things really changed. So before I even moved into the learning space, I had somebody reach out to me actually and ask if they could be my mentor. And I didn't really understand it back then. I was like, why are you giving yourself more work? Because as a mentor, doesn't that mean more for you to do? But I think that was somebody who was a mentor in the sense of just steering me in the right direction, advising me on what my options were, what the possibilities were, trying to understand where I wanted to be and how I needed to get there. Because remember, I was still studying at this time. So I was almost finished, actually. I was in my last year. And it was really helpful. And to this day, it's somebody that I feel I did learn a lot from, and I would be very comfortable asking for advice.
Yeah, that's good. So you felt like you could ask this person about anything.
Yeah, like, work related. A lot of it was like work related, anything.
But even if it had to be like, let's say you were unhappy at work or you were looking at a possibility of changing jobs, would they advise you? Would that bias for like, oh no, you have to stay with us?
No, there was no bias. It was purely a mentor regardless of.
Yeah. So that's what I struggled to find. And I only found that later on, where this person, even when I found out that we were moving here, I discussed it with him and I said, listen, this is the opportunity coming up. And even though we were still working at the same place, and he had all the power to go to someone and be like, this guy is looking to leave, get him out the door now. He never did that to me. We had an open conversation professionally and like mentor to mentee, advising me of what's the best route to take to come here, what to look out for when you're moving to Europe and stuff. And that's what I see as a proper mentor.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to have that kind of relationship with basically my direct boss when I moved into learning.
Yeah.
And she's very much still a part of my life now, but she was literally not intentionally my mentor and kind of still is. It was never this conversation like, hey, I want to mentor you, or hey, will you be my mentor? But I worked under her and I just really looked up to her for the way that she handled things. And, like as a woman in that space and the things that like we dealt with and stuff like that, like I really, really admire the way she did things. And we were so alike, but we also had good conflict. So we could not be on the same page about something, but she would say to me, okay, Lobeen, like, we can't do this. Why do you want to do it this way or whatever? And at the same time, I would be like, but I don't really agree with this. And it was never like, well, I'm your boss and thou shalt, or I'm telling you, you have to do this way or anything like that. It was a really, really good relationship. It was a good environment. And I think the other things I got from that relationship was also that she trusted me to do things. Like she would literally just hand something over to me and be like, do it your way. Whatever you need my help with, you come to me. And it wasn't just like brushing things off or just dumping things in my lap. It was giving me the chance to actually grow. And because of that kind of relationship that we had, I think I actually grew the most under her. And I owe a lot of who I became as a professional to her. And, that was the difference between having a mentor and just somebody that I genuinely looked up to.
Yeah, I can see that.
And she's great. She is like absolutely phenomenal. And she was the person actually who I had spoken to whenever anything happened. So she was actually very much a friend and a boss and everything else. So when things were going wrong in like, personal life stuff, it wasn't hard to say, listen, it's a tough time. This is going on. So, and I think that's also important because we also forget, like, sometimes your personal life is going to impact what happens at work.
Yeah, if it doesn't, then there's something wrong with you.
Like, how do you, to an extent, yes, of course you can separate the two, but sometimes that overlap just happens because it affects your mental state or abilities to do certain
The people
things.
that say they can switch off are lying, because even if you are having a bad day at home and you switch off and you still go and do your work, I guarantee it's not at the pace that you would normally do.
Yeah, there is some effect.
Maybe you work the extra hour to make up for it, but still an effect.
No, absolutely. I agree. And, she was the type of person I could say that to. And when I was looking to leave and stuff, it was very open conversations. And she really gave me the advice for what's best for me.
Yeah, that's good.
And that I appreciated. So, yeah, she's somebody that I will always owe a lot, if not most, of the professional that I grew into. And within that team that I worked with actually as well, I had a lot of people that I looked up to. So I may not have a lot of mentors, but there were a lot of people who I admired and I looked up to. And it wasn't necessarily always from what they grew into professionally and what their titles were. It was literally just about sometimes how people handled situations with other people that I looked up to. And that's where I think I picked up a lot of, and I learned a lot.
I can see that.
So I think it's important. I think mentors are important, but I think what's more important is that if you have the right people around you to pick up things from, not bad habits, of course, but, the right kind of things. And it doesn't always have to be linked to your professional career. Sometimes just picking up things from people that make you a better person on the whole is good enough for me.
Yeah, I agree. In my first job towards the end, I made friends with someone who helped me a lot in the social aspect of working life and building relationships with people in the office rather than just sitting doing my work. Because I think as an Indian child, especially in my generation, your generation, we're told to head down, do your work, shut up, do your work, get it done. That's what's important. And no one tells you, like, being a social butterfly at work is just as important.
Not a suck up, a social butterfly.
No, not a suck up, but knowing your colleagues in a way that makes you useful to everyone, having a relationship with them so they can be open with you to come to you with problems, or you can go to them with problems. It's just as an important tool, and that's not taught to us as Indian children, I feel.
No, I agree, because I think I didn't realize how much it meant or how important it was to be a part of having lunch with everybody or taking that walk to go get coffee with someone.
Yeah, because for me as well, it felt almost naughty.
Yeah.
You're taking lunch and you're having a good time at work, you should be working.
Exactly. Something I actually also really struggled with is when there was anybody who was Indian and much older than me, like an auntie or an uncle age. Especially when I was young and I would see them like, working and stuff. I really struggled addressing people by their names when that was typical work culture. Because even till now, in my head, when I think about certain people, I'm like, oh, so it's uncle this and auntie that, not just...
I can't say I had that experience.
Oh, that was a struggle for me, is to not, blurt out, sorry, auntie this and sorry, uncle that, but, I need this from you.
Even, I didn't even have that inclination to do it with one of the guys that I started working with. And I obviously started working very young, well, not very young as you, but young. And he just last year, I think, retired. So the age gap is huge, and he's an Indian uncle. I never had that, even though there was people in his team who weren't Indian that called him
uncle. Yeah. You see, that was my big struggle. Culturally, that was where I found that to be a struggle. I don't know how to do this. Can't just be calling you out here by your name. If my mother had to hear that, she'll back at me. I would catch it.
Yeah, I think that just goes like with the way we grew up was very different because I didn't have a lot of the uncles and aunties that were older to put that restriction on me.
True, or to force that.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap this up, tell us about some of the funny characters that you noticed in the workplace.
Well, there's one that comes to mind immediately, and it's something that I'll never forget because it taught me a lot. And we had this one guy where he always looked miserable. Like he looked like he hated life. He was always like very blunt, to the point, abrupt with everyone. And, he eventually left and stuff, and that was that. But someone then said to me, he can't understand it because you spend 9 hours a day in this office, which is more time than you spend at home when you think about it, because you spend 8 hours of that day sleeping. Yeah. And then you got an hour in South Africa, especially, you got an hour to work and an hour back. So you're only at home for if you're lucky, you're only at home for 5 hours? Yeah. And actually, you spend most of your time at work. So why come to work and be miserable? Why hate your job? So that kind of put into perspective for me, okay, this is something I have to enjoy. If I'm not enjoying, I shouldn't be doing it, because I can't be miserable for majority of my day, and that's majority of my life. So that was someone who had an impact on me that he never knew.
I shouldn't even think it would have affected him even if he didn't know about it.
I don't know. But yeah. And you?
We had a lot of characters. I think if I could group them a little bit, we had the faffers. So the faffers are the ones that run around busy all the time. They're so busy, running from this meeting to that meeting and running around here, running around there, but they're the ones that actually do the least amount of work. But they'll faff around for everything all the time.
Yeah. I know those. I know those.
Okay. Then we had the braggers.
Yes.
The braggers who would just find any excuse to talk to you about something that they could brag about.
Oh, I thought you were going to go bragging the other way, which is another thing that I think us as Indian children don't benefit from.
Bragging about their work.
Yeah, so I think we get taught to not boast.
No, well, this is the same group of people.
Yeah, we get taught not to boast, not to be overly proud of what we do because it's what's expected of us. And I see it now, and I wish I had seen it early in my career to say, hey, I did this, look at me. But I never did that. I just did submit it and moved on to the next project or next assignment. And the people that ended up taking credit for it got where they needed to be. And people that took credit for even things that are, in my opinion, not as good got, rewarded.
We definitely did underestimate how much of value there is in taking credit for the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And acknowledging when you've actually done good things. We always wait for somebody else to, say it or to boast about it. But even when that happens, then we're kind of very modest.
Yeah, I think it's something that I hope we're not passing down to the next generation. I hope, the next generation of Indian professionals are being taught to sing their own praises, because no one's going to sing it for you.
True.
And you don't have your parents working with you to be like, look what my son did.
I agree. And okay, so back to characters. Okay, so what's my next one? I think my most irritating one was the people who took credit for what you did. And I've had this experience actually with working with different bosses in the same team, where I had one who would gladly go to leadership meetings and be like, listen, I don't know what's going on here. Alisha runs the show. So if you have questions, I'll call her in. or let me know, she'll get back to you. And then I had somebody else after that go in and try and talk on my points, but then couldn't answer the questions for it. Instead of saying, actually, this is not what I do. Alisha runs this. So let me know what questions you've got. And, she'll get back to you, or I'll call her in or whatever. And the latter there really irritates me because I will fully 100% respect somebody who can have enough confidence to say, this is my team's job. This person in my team is responsible for that. I know that they're doing it. And, overall, I know it's running well. But the nitty-gritty is not my area of expertise. It's theirs. So let me know what you need and that person will get back to you. I have more respect for that person who can be honest with that than the person saying, yeah, I know absolutely every single thing that is happening with every single person in my team to that minute detail.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I actually think that's bad leadership.
It is bad leadership, and it's one of the reasons I want our children to one day play sports in like a team setting, because look at a football captain. It might be a goalkeeper. He has no place telling a striker how to strike a ball.
Yeah.
It might be a striker. He has no place telling a goalkeeper how to save. But you have to be a leader enough to give advice, but also to let your team do what they need to.
Yeah, definitely. So we have those characters, and then...
Did you have the work relationship characters?
Oh, so many of those. Actually, some of them ended up in like really successful marriages, but we definitely had the work relationship.
Oh, I meant like work husband, work wife, not the real.
Oh, the real ones. Yeah.
So you had the people that were in relationships outside of their workplace, but in the workplace they were like, are they not?
Yeah. The people that spent a lot of their time together suspiciously.
Well, I think the girl that I told you that I made friends with, a lot of people just assumed that, I don't think they assumed we were together. I think it got to this weird point where if I was doing something and they saw me, they'd be like, oh, where's so-and-so? Yeah. And I'd be like, I don't know where she is.
So it was always like, you're together all the time.
Yeah.
So something was wrong.
Yeah. Also, when I resigned from my position, they're like, oh, how did she take it? Like,
yeah, I get that. I had a couple of people who I was really close to, and I would spend a lot of my time with them. And I think a lot of people always thought things were happening, but it is what it is. I don't really care much for that. I'm thinking about it now because you spoke about work relationships, the cheating scandals in the office. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, you see it on TV and stuff, and you don't actually think, like, I never thought, this is not like a real thing. This is like scandals for TV, and maybe it happens once in a while. But the amount of times that I've seen it happen is insane.
It's crazy. I'm okay with people who date in the office, provided that it's not like, you're not reporting to the other person, but cheating. Sure.
Yeah, I remember when I was still a student and doing vacation work, there was a scandal where these two went off somewhere for lunch and the husband showed up at the office and he was furious and asking, where is whoever, I can't even remember names anyway, where is this person and stuff. And apparently everyone in the office knew what was going on and they just kept quiet about it, and it was just like a weird day.
That's just crazy. Yeah, I think there's so many other characters, but maybe we'll discuss them at later points.
Maybe we'll even have some on the podcast.
Maybe we'll even have some of those characters on, yeah. Well, thank you for this, Mickey.
Thank you.
And until our next episode, shop sweet and aware. Lots of love.